My name is Ben Holt, and I have spent most of my adult life being the least important person in the room. I do not say that with bitterness. I say it because it is accurate, and because being accurate about what you are is the first step toward understanding what you can do with it. I was a junior systems technician on the research vessel Ardent, which was the kind of title that meant I fixed things when they broke and stayed out of the way when they did not. The Ardent had a crew of 31, and in the hierarchy of those 31 I sat somewhere near the bottom, above the automated systems and below everyone who had an opinion about things. The senior staff did not learn my name for the first 2 weeks. I did not mind. I used the time to learn the ship. The Ardent was a joint research mission, which meant its crew was a mix of species: Kelvari scientists, Harathi navigators, 2 Tethian data analysts, and a handful of humans in support roles like mine. The mission commander was a Kelvari named Orvan Seld, precise and thorough and genuinely brilliant at her work, which was the study of deep space energy patterns in the outer Dravosi belt. She was also, I noticed in the first week, running a crew that had too many senior voices and not enough people listening to the ship itself. That is a specific kind of problem. It happens on research vessels more than anywhere else, because research vessels attract people who are very good at thinking, and sometimes less practiced at noticing. The ship becomes background noise. Systems run until they stop running, and then someone calls the technician, and the technician fixes it, and the ship becomes background noise again. I did not let the ship become background noise again. I did not let the ship become background noise. I read every maintenance log going back to the Ardent's last full service. I traced every system from origin to endpoint. I learned the particular sounds the ventilation made in different atmospheric conditions, and the way the power grid fluctuated slightly during high-demand research cycles, and the 3 places in the structural frame where the resonance sensors gave readings that were technically within tolerance, but that I did not like. By the end of the first month, I knew the Ardent the way you know something you have decided to understand completely. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning in the 6th week of the mission, when we were deep in the Dravosi belt and the nearest station was 4 days out at full speed. I noticed it before the automated systems did, which was becoming a habit. The resonance reading in the port structural frame had shifted. Not dramatically, with intolerance, still technically, but shifted in a direction, and at a rate that the automated system was not flagging because the automated system was comparing each reading to the previous reading and finding the change acceptable. I was comparing it to the reading from 6 weeks ago and finding the cumulative change not acceptable at all. I filed a maintenance report and sent it to the chief engineer, a Harathi named 4L, who was competent and busy and who sent back a response that said the automated system showed no fault and to continue monitoring. I continued monitoring. 4 days later, the reading shifted again. I filed another report. Vorel sent the same response. I did not argue. I started preparing. I spent the next 3 days quietly assembling what I needed from the maintenance supplies, working in the evenings when the technical bay was empty, because what I was preparing was based on a scenario that nobody else currently believed was coming, and trying to explain it before it arrived would take time I might not have TEV. I also wrote everything down. Every reading, every date, every calculation, every step of what I was planning to do and why. I filed it in the maintenance log where it would be found and understood if something happened to me before I could finish. On the 9th day after my first report, the port structural frame failed. Not catastrophically, not all at once. But the primary resonance dampener went first and the secondary went 4 minutes later, and without both dampeners the frame began to flex in the Dravosi belt's gravitational variance in a way that was going to become catastrophic inside of 30 minutes. Every alarm on the ship went off simultaneously. Commander Orvanseld's voice came over the ship immediately, controlled and precise even in the first seconds of a crisis, calling for damage reports and crew positions and the chief engineer. Vorel's response told her what the automated systems were showing, which was accurate but incomplete, and the response he recommended was the standard protocol for structural frame failure, which was correct for a standard failure and wrong for this specific failure because this specific failure had a particular sequence that the standard protocol would make worse. I was already in the maintenance corridor before the second alarm finished sounding. I had been in the corridor for 30 seconds before the alarm started, because I had been watching the resonance reading all morning, and I had known it was coming within the hour, and I had positioned myself accordingly. I keyed my comm. "Commander Seld," I said, "this is Technician Holt. Do not follow the standard structural protocol. I need 3 minutes." The silence that followed lasted approximately 2 seconds, which felt longer. "Holt," she said. She did not know my name, but she found it in the crew manifest fast enough. Explained while I worked, Becca. See, there was no time to do one and then the other. I talked through the sequence, the cumulative resonance shift, the reason the standard protocol would accelerate the failure rather than arrest it, and the alternative sequence I had prepared, while my hands moved through the maintenance access junction in the port frame corridor, and did the work I had been quietly readying for 9 days. Orvan Seld listened without interrupting. When I finished explaining, she said one word. Proceed, she said. I proceeded. The sequence took 11 minutes, and they were 11 minutes of very focused work in a corridor that was flexing slightly in ways corridors are not supposed to flex, but the preparation I had done meant I was not figuring out what to do while I was doing it. I was just doing it, and that is the difference between 11 minutes and 30. When the resonance dampeners came back online, the flexing stopped and the alarms began to quiet one by one, and the ship went from a vessel in crisis to a vessel with a solved problem, which are two very different things to be inside of. I sat on the floor of the maintenance corridor for a moment and breathed. Then I got up and began the secondary checks, because the sequence I had used was correct, but the frame still needed a full inspection, and I was already here and it needed doing. I was halfway through the secondary checks when Commander Orvan Seld appeared in the corridor. She was tall even by Kelvari standards, with the silver-gray skin and pale eyes of the Eastern Research bloodlines. And she moved through the maintenance corridor with the slightly careful gait of someone who did not spend much time in maintenance corridors and was paying attention to where she put her feet. She stopped and looked at me, and then at the work I had done, and then back at me. You filed 2 reports, she said. Yes, I said without stopping the secondary check. Vorel responded that the automated system showed no fault, she said. Yes, I said. You prepared anyway, she said. Yes, I said. She was quiet for a moment, watching me work. How long have you been on this ship? She said. 6 weeks, I said. And you knew the frame was failing before the automated system flagged it, she said. The automated system compares each reading to the previous reading, I said. I was comparing to the baseline from 6 weeks ago. The cumulative drift was outside acceptable range even when the incremental change was not. You read 6 weeks of baseline data, she said. I read everything from the last full service, I said. 14 months. She was quiet again. Why? She said. I thought about how to explain it. The same way I always thought about how to explain it. The same way I always thought about how to explain the thing that was obvious from the inside, and apparently not from the outside, because the ship needed someone to pay attention to it, I said. The research is important. The scientists are focused on the research. Someone had to be focused on the research. Someone had to be focused on the ship. She looked at me steadily. That is not in your job description. She looked at me steadily. That is not in your job description. She looked at me steadily. That is not in your job description. She looked at me steadily. That is not in your job description, she said. No, I said, but it needed doing. She stood in the corridor while I finished the secondary checks, and she did not leave. Which I noticed, and she asked 3 technical questions during that time that told me she was understanding what I had done at a level beyond the immediate crisis, which also told me something about her. When I finished, I closed the maintenance panel and stood up, and she was still there. Holt, she said. Commander, I said. Your maintenance reports, she said, both of them. They are thorough and precise, and contained everything needed to understand what was happening and what to do about it. I tried to be clear, I said. They were not acted on, she said. No, I said. That is a failure, Shees. He said, that belongs to this command structure and not to you. I did not say anything because it was accurate and she had said it herself, and adding to it seemed unnecessary. Your role on the ship, she said slowly, is being reclassified. Effective immediately. To what? I said. To whatever it needs to be, she said. To ensure that what happened this morning does not happen again. Because the right person was not being listened to. I looked at her. I am a junior technician, I said. You were a junior technician, she said. This morning you were the most important person on this ship. I intend to reflect that more accurately going forward. She walked back toward the main corridor and stopped at the junction. The secondary frame inspection, she said without turning around. When you have completed it, I want a full report. Not to Vorel, to me. I turned back to the frame and began the tertiary check, because the secondary had shown one reading I wanted to look at again, and because thoroughness was not something I did only when people were watching. 3 months later, at the end of the mission, Orvon Seld filed her mission report with the Kelvari Research Authority. I know what it said about me because she told me directly before we docked, which was the kind of thing she did, direct and without ceremony. It said that the mission had been saved by a junior systems technician who had decided that paying attention to the ship was worth doing even when nobody asked him to. The ship was worth doing even when nobody asked him to. And that the research authority should review its crew structure on joint missions to ensure that the people closest to the systems were being heard by the people making decisions about them. It also said in the final notation that the human capacity for noticing things that others have decided are background noise was one of the most underassessed qualities in the current xenobiology literature, and that she intended to submit a formal recommendation for review. I read that part twice. Then I went back to work. Because the Ardent needed a full post-mission service and I was the person who knew her best, and that was not going to change just because the mission was over. Some ships get under your skin, this one had, and I had never once been replaceable to her. That, in the end, was enough.